She had been sitting at that table for 1 hour and 47 minutes and not one person had looked at her. Not really looked. The kind of look that means something. The kind that says, I see you sitting there, and I think you might be worth walking toward. Her name was Clara Owens. She was 23 years old, and she was wearing a yellow dress she had ironed twice that morning. That was the kind of night it was shaping up to be. The community center smelled like folding chairs and someone's good intentions. There were streamers on the ceiling, pale and slightly wilted, the color of a room that had tried very hard and almost made it. The DJ was playing a song from 6 years ago like it was a gift. Round tables filled the floor, covered in white cloth that had been washed so many times it had gone a shade closer to gray than anyone wanted to admit. A banner above the stage read, Reading Changes Lives Annual Literacy Gala, and beneath it, a buffet table held food that had been warm at 7 and was now simply present. Clara had come because her roommate, Nina, had begged her. Nina was the kind of person who collected causes the way other people collected shoes, enthusiastically, and in quantities that defied available storage. She volunteered at the literacy program 3 times a month, knew all the organizers by name, and had spent 2 weeks telling Clara that this night was going to be wonderful. Then Nina had spent the first 40 minutes of the evening talking to a man named Greg from the donations committee, and Clara had watched that conversation stretch and expand the way a conversation does when 2 people discover they have more to say to each other than they originally planned. Clara had smiled at Nina from across the room, given a small wave that meant go ahead, I'm fine, and then turned back to her sparkling water, and the task of pretending she was not exactly as alone as she was. She was not someone who fell apart over small things. She had grown up in a household where you carried your discomfort quietly, where you did not make a scene, where you sat straight and smiled when you needed to. Her mother used to say, You can feel whatever you want on the inside, Clara, just don't let it spill. So Clara had spent years becoming very good at not spilling. She could sit at a table by herself and look like a woman who had chosen to be there, a woman waiting for friends who were simply running late, a woman who was perfectly comfortable and perfectly fine. But 40 minutes becomes an hour, and an hour becomes almost 2, and the song the DJ is playing becomes the 4th song in a row that no one asked for. And the woman at the next table leans over to her husband and whispers something that makes him laugh. And you watch that small private moment happen and feel the distance between yourself and it like a physical thing, like a wall you didn't build and cannot name. Clara checked her phone. One message from her mother sent 3 hours ago. Don't forget to eat before you go. These events never have enough food. Clara had eaten a full meal at home. She wrote back, You were right, not enough food. Her mother would see it in the morning and feel vindicated. That was something, at least. She set her phone face down on the table. The dance floor had been mostly empty in the beginning, the way dance floors always are at the start of an event, everyone circling the idea of it without committing. But now it had filled. Couples moved in slow loops. A group of women in their 40s had claimed a corner, and were having the kind of fun that does not require a partner or anyone's permission. Near the far edge, a woman who had to be at least 65 was pulling her husband by the wrist, and he was resisting with the energy of a man who had been resisting this particular request for 30 years and losing every time. Clara watched them and felt something she could not entirely name. It was not sadness, exactly. It was more like the feeling you get when you see something beautiful happening somewhere you are not. She had worn the yellow dress because it was the brightest thing she owned. She had wanted to feel like someone who had arrived, someone the room might notice and welcome and pull toward it. Instead, she felt like a note that had been slipped under the wrong door. She did not cry. She was very good at not crying in public. She straightened her back, picked up her glass, took a slow sip, and looked out at the dance floor with the expression she had practiced since she was 17. Calm, self-contained, unbothered. Her back hurt from holding it so straight. This was not the first time a room had failed to want her. She had been the new girl 3 times in 4 years of school, each move following her father's job transfers across different cities. She had learned early that she was not the kind of person rooms adopted immediately. She was not loud enough, or she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the groups were already formed and the doors already closed. She always found her way eventually. She always ended up with a small, loyal circle of people who truly knew her. But the in-between spaces, the arrivals, the long nights before belonging showed up, those had always cost her something. She looked at the banner above the stage. Reading changes lives. She thought, so does one conversation. So does one person choosing to cross a room. She did not expect anyone to cross the room. She was reaching for her phone again, thinking she might text Nina and say she was heading home, when she heard the sound of a chair being pulled out beside her. She looked up. A man sat down. He set 2 glasses of sparkling water on the table, one in front of himself and one in front of her, as calmly as if this were a meeting he had scheduled and was slightly early for. He had a lanyard around his neck that read staff in small letters. He was looking out at the dance floor. He did not look at her right away. He just looked at the floor, at the dancers, at the DJ, with the steady, patient expression of a man who had already made up his mind about something and was simply waiting for the right moment to say it. Clara looked at the glass of water he had placed in front of her. Then she looked at him. He turned and met her eyes. "The DJ," he said, "has not played a single song from this decade. I've been tracking it." She did not know what she had expected. She did not know why that sentence, of all sentences, was the one that found the gap in everything she had been holding together for almost 2 hours. But she felt something loosen, just slightly, just enough. "How long have you been tracking it?" she said. "Since 7:45, he said. He said it like a scientist reporting data, completely serious. 6 songs, 0 from the current decade. I did the math. The odds of this being accidental are very low." "So it's intentional," she said. "Has to be," he said. "Someone made a choice." She almost laughed. The almost was the whole thing. The almost was the hinge the entire night turned on, though she would not understand that until much later, sitting in her apartment at 2 in the morning, still wearing the yellow dress, thinking about how much distance there is between a room not wanting you and one person deciding otherwise. She did not laugh yet, but she almost did. And he saw it. She could tell he saw it, because the corner of his mouth moved, just barely, the way a person's mouth moves when they have said the exact thing they were trying to say. "I'm Clara," she said. "Owen," he said. "I'm on the volunteer team. I'm supposed to be manning the sign-in table, but everyone who is coming has already come, so." "So you're free." "So I'm free," he said. He looked at the dance floor again. "Do you want to dance?" She looked at him. He was already looking back at the floor, patient, unhurried, like the question was simply sitting there in the open air between them, and she could pick it up or leave it, and either way he would not be injured by her answer. "I'm not a very good dancer," she said. "Neither am I," he said. "That's actually why I'm asking you and not someone else." She stared at him. He turned and looked at her, and there was something in his expression that was so completely without performance, so completely without the effort of trying to seem a particular way, that she felt it like a small shock, like touching something that turns out to be warm when you expected cold. "That's a strange reason," she said. "It's an honest one," he said. She looked at the dance floor. She looked at the couples moving in their slow circles. She looked at the woman in her 60s who had finally gotten her husband to stop resisting. She looked at the glass of sparkling water Owen had placed in front of her without being asked, as if her being thirsty had been a problem worth solving. She stood up. "Okay," she said, "but I'm warning you right now." "Noted," he said, and stood up beside her. They walked to the edge of the dance floor, and the song that was playing was not a good song. It was the kind of song that plays at events like this because someone requested it during the planning meeting, and no one wanted to say no. It was slow and sincere in the way that slightly embarrassing songs are slow and sincere, and it did not care at all that Clara Owens had spent 1 hour and 47 minutes sitting alone at table 7. Owen held out his hand. Not smoothly, not with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times. He held it out the way you hand someone an umbrella when the rain has already started, a little uncertain, a little careful, genuinely meaning it. She took it, and they stepped onto the floor. She stepped on his foot almost immediately. She apologized. He said without looking down that he had 2 feet and this was a worthy sacrifice, and she felt the laugh finally come, quiet and real, the kind of laugh that arrives not because something is funny but because something is a relief. And he smiled just slightly, just enough, and they kept moving badly, slowly, in a small circle at the edge of the floor, and the streamers above them were still that hopeful, wilted, almost beige color, and the DJ was still playing music from the wrong decade, and the night was still exactly what it had been. Except Clara Owens was not sitting alone at table 7 anymore. And that, it turned out, was the whole difference. She would think about it later, about how small it had been. A chair pulled out, 2 glasses of water, a sentence about a DJ, a hand extended without the pretense of grace. That was all it was. That was everything it was. She had spent 1 hour and 47 minutes waiting for the room to want her. It took one person deciding to cross it. Owen Hartley was not the kind of person who stood out in a room. He had known this about himself for a long time, not with bitterness, and not with the kind of quiet despair that turns into a story a person tells themselves about being unwanted. He knew it the way he knew other practical things about himself, like the fact that he was not a morning person, and that he had a genuine talent for parallel parking that he was oddly proud of. He was simply a person who did not occupy the center of a room's attention. He sat in the spaces between things. He noticed what other people missed. He listened when others were already thinking of their response. At 26, he had made something of a peace with this. Not a perfect peace. The kind that still had rough edges you felt occasionally, like a healed-over cut that aches when the weather changes. He had been volunteering with the literacy program for 14 months. He had started because a friend had mentioned it, and he had been looking for something to do with his Saturdays that was not watching television and feeling vaguely guilty about it. He had expected to spend a few weeks and then quietly stop. Instead, he had stayed and then stayed longer, and at some point it had stopped being about filling his Saturdays and started being about the kids in the Tuesday afternoon reading group who arrived loud and resistant and left, most of them, a little more certain that the words on the page were not the enemy. He loved that work. He did not talk about it much, because he had found that talking about the things you love most tends to reduce them somehow, tends to flatten them into an elevator pitch when they are actually something that fills more space than an elevator could contain. He had arrived at the gala at 6:30 to help set up. He had arranged chairs. He had tested the microphone, found it worked, and told no one because there was no one currently asking. He had helped carry a folding table from the storage room to the entrance, where it became the sign-in table he had been assigned to manage. He had managed it efficiently. By 8:15, the last of the expected attendees had arrived, and he was standing at a table with a clipboard and nowhere to be. He was good at filling time. He could occupy space without requiring anything from it. He walked the perimeter of the room, checked in with a few of the other volunteers, refilled his water glass, and did what he usually did at events like this. Watched. Not in the way that makes people uncomfortable, not staring. He watched the way he had always watched rooms, the way you read a page, taking in the information, finding the patterns, understanding the geography of who was connected to whom and who was standing at the edges. He saw her at table 7 at 7:50. The yellow dress was impossible to miss, not because of the dress itself, but because of how still she was inside it. Everyone else at the gala was in motion, even the people sitting down, leaning towards someone, gesturing, laughing, tracking the room with their eyes in the restless way people do when they are part of something. She was still, upright, her glass of water held in both hands, her eyes on the dance floor with an expression that was carefully assembled, and if you were looking closely, costing her something to maintain. Owen was looking closely. He did not decide to go to her immediately. He stood at the back of the room and thought about it the way he thought about most things, carefully from several angles, checking the calculation for errors. The calculation went something like this. She has been sitting alone for a long time. She is not enjoying herself. She is performing enjoying herself, which is a different and more exhausting thing. If someone sat down and talked to her, that would likely be better than the current situation. He was someone. He could sit down and talk to her. The obstacles to this were entirely self-manufactured and not particularly sturdy. He had been on the receiving end of that table, 7 feeling enough times to know what it cost and what a difference one person could make. He had sat at more than a few tables in more than a few rooms, waiting for someone to notice, watching the evening go by, riding it out with the same careful stillness, the same assembled expression, the same glass of water held in both hands. He did not want to be the person who saw that and walked in the other direction. He went to the drink station. He filled 2 glasses of sparkling water. He walked across the room. He told himself on the way across, just sit down. Just be a person sitting near another person. Don't perform anything. Don't try to be interesting. Just be present and real and see what happens. He sat down beside her, set the glasses on the table, looked at the dance floor. And then, because she hadn't looked away and he could feel her attention beside him like a quiet question, he said the first honest thing that came to mind about the room they were both sitting in. He talked about the DJ. He had not planned to open with the DJ, but it was true, and it was slightly funny, and it was something they both had access to, sitting in the same room with the same evidence, and it required nothing from either of them except the willingness to observe it together. She said the DJ was in the bargaining stage. He said he had already passed through that. She almost laughed. That almost was the thing. That almost told him more than most full laughs he had heard that evening. Because it meant she was still in there, underneath the stillness and the careful posture and the assembled expression. She was still findable. Her name was Clara. She had calm eyes and a way of looking at him directly when he spoke that made him aware he was being genuinely listened to, which was not as common an experience as people might think. He did not try to impress her. He did not lean forward and turn on the version of himself that he sometimes reached for in social situations, the one that was slightly more polished, slightly more constructed, the one that felt like wearing a shirt that almost fits but pulls slightly at the shoulder. He just sat beside her. He said honest things. He asked questions he was actually curious about. He did not pretend to be easier in a room than he was. She was not easy in a room either. He could see that. And she was not apologizing for it the way some people did, that over-explaining, that rushing to fill silences with self-deprecation, that constant signaling of I know I'm a lot or I know I'm a little much. She just sat with it. She had dignity in her discomfort, the way a person has dignity who has had to carry their discomfort without anyone helping for a long time. They talked for 23 minutes. He knew because he checked his watch at the end of it, not because he wanted it to be over, but because he wanted to know how long it had been. It had felt like a different kind of time than the hour before it. She told him about her roommate, Nina. She told him about the sign on the banner above the stage and how she had read it 6 times over the course of the evening, and it was starting to feel personal. She asked him about the literacy program, and when he talked about the Tuesday reading group, she leaned forward slightly, just slightly, and asked what the hardest part was. No one had ever asked him that before. The people who asked about his volunteering usually wanted the inspiring version. They wanted the stories about breakthroughs, about the kid who hadn't been able to read a paragraph in September who read a full page in November. They wanted the version that made them feel good about the world. She asked about the hardest part. He told her the truth. He told her that the hardest part was the kids who got close and then stopped coming, who arrived for 6 weeks and made real progress and then disappeared, for reasons that had nothing to do with reading and everything to do with everything else going on in their lives, who you thought about, whose names you looked at on the attendance sheet the following week, hoping. She listened. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "That sounds like caring about something you can't fully control." He looked at her. "That's exactly what it is," he said. She nodded. She looked back at the dance floor. He looked at the dance floor too. The song playing was slow, not a particularly good song, but it was there and the floor was lit and the evening was not over. He stood up. He held out his hand. He said he was not a good dancer. This was true. He had a complicated history with dancing that involved a middle school formal, and a moment he had never discussed with anyone and still occasionally thought about at 3 in the morning for no good reason. He was not graceful. He was not fluid. He moved with the careful, slightly deliberate quality of a person who is thinking about what his body is doing while it is doing it, which is not the ideal condition for dancing, but is an honest one. He asked her anyway because the evening was running out, and because she had asked him about the hardest part, and because the glass of sparkling water was still sitting on the table in front of her, and he thought, standing there, that he was tired of being the version of himself who watched from the back of the room. She said she was not a good dancer either. He said that was why he was asking her. She stood up, and they walked to the floor together. She stepped on his foot almost immediately, and he told her he had 2 of them, and she laughed, and it was not an almost this time. It was a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere genuine, the kind you cannot plan for or perform. He kept his hand in hers. They moved in a small, imperfect circle. His timing was slightly off. Her arms were a little stiff, with the effort of not stepping on him a second time. The song was sincere in that slightly uncomfortable way slow songs at community events are sincere, like a greeting card that means well. None of it was graceful. All of it was real. He thought, moving across that floor with her, about the version of himself at the back of the room an hour ago, the one running calculations, the one weighing obstacles, the one finding reasons to stay exactly where he was. He thought about how close he had come to staying there, how easy it would have been. He was glad he had bad math skills. She smelled like something clean and faintly floral, and she was trying so hard not to step on him again that she had gone slightly rigid, and he said, without looking at her, "You can relax. My feet are very resilient." And she made a sound that was between a laugh and a sigh, and something in her posture changed. Not dramatically, not the way it changes in films, where one sentence fixes everything and the person transforms on the spot. It changed the way things change in real life. Gradually, then slightly, a small degree of release that meant she was a little less alone than she had been a moment ago. They were, he thought, 2 people who were not good at rooms. 2 people who knew what it felt like to sit at the edge of a party and feel the distance between yourself and everyone else like something you could measure. He had crossed that distance tonight. He was glad. When the song ended, he did not make an occasion of releasing her hand. He just did. She took a small step back. They looked at each other for a moment, and the look said something neither of them put into words. She said, "Thank you for the water." He said, "Thank you for the dance." They walked back to the table. He pulled out her chair. She sat down. He sat beside her, and they stayed there for another half hour, talking about nothing and everything in the way that conversations go when 2 people have decided, without saying it, that they are glad to be in the same room. Nina came to find Clara at 9:45, glowing and apologetic. "I am so sorry," Nina said. We were just talking and I completely lost track of." "It's okay," Clara said. She was smiling, not the assembled kind, the real kind. Nina looked at Owen, then back at Clara. The look on her face said a great many things very quickly. Owen stood up. He shook Nina's hand. He said it was nice to meet her. He looked at Clara and said he hoped he'd see her at another one of these. She said, "Ask for my number and you will." He asked. She gave it to him. He walked back to the sign-in table to help pack up, and the room was beginning to clear, and the streamers were still there in that hopeful, almost beige color, and the banner still red reading "Changes Lives" above the stage. He thought it was not only reading. The morning after the gala, Clara woke up still thinking about it. She had come home at 10:30, changed out of the yellow dress, hung it carefully on the back of her door, and lain on her bed looking at the ceiling for a while before she actually slept. She had gone over the evening the way you go over something you want to hold onto, the way you press a flower between the pages of a book, carefully, so it keeps its shape. She thought about the water. That was the part she kept returning to. The 2 glasses of sparkling water, placed on the table without a word, without a performance, without the setup of a person who expects credit for small kindness. Just water. Just, "Here, this was missing, so I brought it." She had been at that table for almost 2 hours. 17 people had walked past it. Not one of them had looked at her with the attention of a person who wondered if she needed anything. Owen had. She did not know what to do with that yet. She was not someone who made large conclusions quickly. She was a person who turned things over slowly, who checked them from different angles before she knew what she thought about them. She had learned this about herself at an early age, had learned it was not a flaw but simply her nature, the way some plants grow toward the sun immediately and others take time finding it. She picked up her phone. There was his number, added last night in the pale gold light of the community center parking lot, while Nina stood nearby pretending to look at her own phone. She did not text him, not yet. She held the phone for a moment thinking, and then she put it on the nightstand and went to make coffee. She thought about what he had said about the kids who stopped coming, the ones whose names he still looked at on the attendance sheet. She had thought about that on the drive home, thought about what it said about him. You could tell a great deal about a person from what they worried about when the thing they were worried about was not themselves. Owen hardly worried about kids whose names appeared on an attendance sheet. He tracked the DJ's setlist with the precision of a researcher. He crossed a room with 2 glasses of water and sat down next to a woman he had never met and said something honest about the room they were both in. These were not small things. Nina knocked on her door at 11. She was wearing her Saturday morning expression, which Clara had learned to read over 2 years of shared living, equal parts curiosity and barely restrained enthusiasm. "Can I come in?" "You're already halfway in," Clara said. Nina sat on the edge of her bed. She had the look of someone who has been exercising tremendous restraint and is no longer willing to continue. "So," she said. "So," Clara said. "Owen," Nina said. "Owen," Clara agreed. "He's nice," Nina said. Then, because Nina was constitutionally incapable of being subtle for long, "He is very nice, Clara, like, genuinely. Greg knows him from the program. He's been volunteering there for over a year. He's really good with the kids, apparently, like, the kids actually like him, which is not nothing." "It's not nothing," Clara agreed. "Greg said he's the kind of person who shows up and doesn't need anyone to notice." Clara was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," she said. She knew that kind of person. She had not met enough of them. Nina lasted exactly 4 more minutes before she said, "Are you going to text him?" "I'm thinking," Clara said. "You've been thinking since last night." "That is how I do things." "Clara, Nina picked up the yellow dress from the back of the door and held it up. You wore this. You went. You sat at that table for almost 2 hours, and then something actually happened. She put the dress down. Her voice was gentler now. Text him. Clara looked at her phone. She picked it up. She typed, "This is Clara from last night. I wanted to say thank you again for the water, also the dance, also the DJ analysis." She held it for a second. She sent it. Her heart did something she chose not to overdescribe. It did something. That was enough. The reply came 4 minutes later. "I've been updating the DJ analysis. He did play one song from this decade. I want to be accurate." She read it 3 times. She was smiling before she reached the end of the first read. She wrote back which song. He sent her the title. It was a song she knew, a slow, sincere song, the kind that plays at events like this. She stared at the screen. Then she typed, "That was the song we danced to." A pause, then "I know." She set the phone down, picked it up, set it down again. Nina, who had been pretending to scroll through her own phone on the other side of the room, said, "What happened?" "Nothing," Clara said. She was still smiling. "You're smiling like something happened," Nina said. Clara picked up her coffee. It had gone a little cold. She did not care. "He updated the DJ analysis," she said. Nina looked at her. "That is the most you thing I have ever heard." They talked every day that week. Not long calls or elaborate messages, nothing that announced itself as significant, small things, observations. He sent her a photo of a very small dog he passed on his way to work, just the photo, no caption. She sent back, strong, independent energy. He replied, he looked like he had opinions about everything. She replied, "So do I." He wrote back, "I know." She thought about that one for a while. On Thursday he asked if she wanted to get coffee on Saturday. She said yes before she had finished reading the sentence. Then she sat with her phone and thought, "I said yes very fast." Then she thought, "Good. It is good to say yes to things that deserve a yes." She had a history of saying maybe when she meant yes, of waiting, of wanting to be sure, of making the person she was deciding about wait too, not out of cruelty, but out of the habit of protecting herself from the disappointment of choosing something that then didn't work. She had spent a long time learning to be careful. She thought about the way Owen had held out his hand on the dance floor, not smooth, not rehearsed, a little uncertain, a little careful, genuinely meaning it. That kind of hand you could take. She thought about the first moment she had seen him. He had sat down so calmly, placed the water in front of her as if she had already been accounted for. She had been invisible to that room for almost 2 hours, and then someone had sat down and made her visible, not by making a production of it, not by saying "I noticed you sitting alone," not by performing the rescue, but simply by being there and talking honestly and asking real questions. She did not know yet what Owen Hartley was going to be in her life. She was not someone who decided that quickly, but she knew, with the steady certainty of someone who has learned to trust certain signals, that he was someone worth finding out. On Saturday morning, she put on a blue sweater she liked. She walked to the coffee shop he had suggested, a small place 3 blocks from the community center, and he was already there when she arrived. He was sitting at a corner table with 2 cups and an expression she was beginning to recognize. Calm, patient, looking at the door in the way a person looks when they are waiting for something they are genuinely glad is coming. He stood up when he saw her. "I got here early," he said. "I wasn't sure how long it would take." "I got here on time," she said. "I know," he said. "You're precise like that, I noticed." She sat down across from him. He had already ordered her a coffee. He had guessed right. She did not ask how he knew. She looked at the cup, and then she looked at him, and she thought, "This is what it looks like when someone has been paying attention." It looked like this: a corner table, a correct guess, a person who stood up when you walked in the door. She picked up the cup. "You were tracking me too," she said. "I'm a volunteer," he said. "We notice things." She laughed. He smiled just enough. Outside the window, the street was its ordinary Saturday self. People with bags and dogs and strollers, and no idea they were walking past anything of consequence. Just the usual Saturday street, going about its usual Saturday life. Inside, Clara Owens drank her coffee and talked to Owen Hartley, and the morning moved forward in the particular way it does when you are somewhere you have decided to be. She had spent 1 hour and 47 minutes the week before waiting for the room to want her. She was not waiting anymore. Clara and Owen talked for 3 hours at that coffee shop. This was not something either of them planned for. They had arrived with the energy of two people who expected a reasonable amount of time and a polite amount of conversation, the exploratory kind, where you learn the basic facts of another person's life, the way you learn the layout of a new building, starting with the main rooms before you find the back stairs. But the main rooms led somewhere, and then somewhere else, and then the cups were empty, and the Saturday morning had become afternoon, and the coffee shop had filled and emptied and filled again around them. They talked about their families. Owen was the second of 3 kids, grew up in a house that was loud and full and always slightly short on quiet, which was why he had spent so much of his childhood in his room reading, not to hide from the noise, but to find a space inside it that was his own. He had a sister who called him every Sunday and a brother who sent memes instead of phone calls, and he loved both of them differently and equally. Clara was an only child. Her parents had been careful with her, the loving and watchful kind of careful that grows a person who is self-sufficient and also, sometimes, very alone in ways they cannot fully explain. She had moved 3 times before she was 16. She had a skill for arriving in new places and building herself a small, stable life, and a corresponding slowness with real closeness, the kind that takes time and trust, and the willingness to be known past what you show in the first few meetings. She did not say that last part out loud, but she thought it sitting across from him, and she thought he's the same, a little. She could see it in the way he talked. He was precise. He chose his words with the care of someone who had spent time inside his own head and knew the difference between what he meant to say and what he defaulted to. He did not fill silence out of discomfort. He let it sit until something honest arrived to fill it. She found this restful in a way she had not expected. They talked about work. She was 2 semesters from her degree. She wanted to work with pediatric patients eventually, had a particular soft spot for anxious kids who clenched their small hands on the chair arm, whom she imagined she could help through the part they were afraid of, could be the steady thing in a room that felt scary. He worked in urban planning, in a city office that dealt with parks and public spaces, the unglamorous end of the field where you spent a lot of time in meetings about drainage and zoning rather than grand visions. But he loved it. Genuinely loved the idea that a well-designed bench in the right place could change what a neighborhood felt like, could make a person feel that the space was built for them. "That's what you were doing," she said, "at the gala." He looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Designing the bench," she said. "You found a space that wasn't working for someone and you changed what it felt like." He was quiet for a moment. "I hadn't thought of it that way," he said. "Does it fit?" "It fits," he said. She looked out the window. Someone walked past with a dog that had the energy of a very small person who had decided today was the day for everything. "I've been that bench for a few people," she said. "The one that shows up in the right place. I'm less good at letting people be that for me." She did not know why she said it. She said it because it was true, and because something about the way he listened made true things easier to say. He did not rush to respond. He looked at his cup and then back at her, and his expression had the particular quality of someone who understood what had just been given to them and was treating it accordingly. "I know that position," he said. "It's easier on one side." Yes, she said. Safer, he said. Yes, she said again. They sat with that for a moment. Then he said, I think you let me be that, last Saturday. She looked at him. He was not pressing the point. He said it the way he said most things, calmly, as an observation, and then he let it be there between them without pushing it further. She thought about the moment she had taken his hand on the dance floor, how she had not hesitated exactly, but she had checked something inside herself before she did, some internal thing she had learned to check. And she had checked it and found that it said, this is fine, this one is fine, and she had taken the hand. Maybe a little, she said. The afternoon went on. They ordered more coffee. They talked about books, which revealed an amount of information about both of them that they were not fully prepared for. He read slowly and thoroughly, went back to passages he liked, made small notes in the margins of things that surprised him. She read quickly and then thought about books for weeks after, turning them over internally, extracting meaning gradually in the way she did with most things that mattered to her. We'd be terrible at a book club together, he said. Or very good, she said. You'd be done by week 3, I'd be done by week 6. We'd have very different things to say. That sounds more interesting, he said. It does, she agreed. She thought, not for the first time that afternoon, about the woman at the next table the week before, the one who had leaned over and said something that made her husband laugh. The private language of two people who know each other well. She had felt the distance between herself and that as something physical. The distance was smaller now, not gone. She was not the kind of person who let distances close all at once, but smaller. They left the coffee shop at 1:45. The street had that particular Saturday afternoon quality, light going golden at the edges, the city quieter in the middle of the day. They stood on the sidewalk, and for a moment neither of them said anything. This was good, she said. It was, he said. He meant it. She could tell he meant it the same way she had learned to tell when things were performed and when they were not. I'd like to do it again, she said. So would I, he said. They said goodbye. She walked 2 blocks before she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the afternoon. She stood at a corner and let herself feel it, quietly, privately, the way she always processed the things that mattered to her. It was not everything at once. It was not a flood. It was more like the tide she had once watched come in on a beach in Michigan, when she was 12 and her family had taken a summer trip, and she had sat on a flat rock for an hour watching the water approach. It came so slowly you could barely see the movement. But if you sat still long enough and you were patient, you watched the water reach you. She had been sitting still for a long time. She walked home in the afternoon light. She thought about the correct cup of coffee already on the table when she arrived. She thought about the way he stood up when she walked in. She thought about him saying, I know, you're precise like that, I noticed. She thought about the bench, and who designs them, and why the right one in the right place can change what a whole neighborhood feels like. She turned the corner toward home. She was smiling again. There is a particular moment in the early life of something real between two people, when it stops being something you have to describe and starts being something that simply is. Clara and Owen reached that moment quietly, without announcement, the way most real things arrive, not in a single conversation or a grand declaration. In the 3rd week, when she texted him a photo of the most aggressively beige waiting room she had ever sat in, and he replied within 30 seconds with a photo of a different beige hallway labeled competition entry. In the 4th week, when he brought her soup from a place near his office because she had mentioned, in passing, 2 days earlier that she was not feeling well, and she had not expected him to remember, and he had. In the 5th week, when they spent a Sunday afternoon at the park near his apartment, and she fell asleep reading for 20 minutes, and when she woke up he had not moved, had not tried to fill the quiet, had simply been there beside her in the afternoon light. She thought about that Sunday for a long time afterward. She had not fallen asleep near another person with any ease in years. She was a light sleeper, a careful sleeper, someone who needed her own space and her own silence to rest. She did not understand entirely how it had happened. She thought it might have something to do with the particular quality of his presence, which was not demanding. He did not fill a room with the weight of himself. He made space. He sat beside you, and the space stayed yours and his simultaneously, which was rare, and which she had not known she needed until she felt it. By the 6th week they had a rhythm. Tuesday evenings sometimes, because he had the reading group on Tuesdays and she had a late class, and they had fallen into the habit of meeting after both were done, splitting a meal at a diner 2 streets from the community center, talking while the late dinner crowd came and went around them. Saturday mornings when schedules allowed. Texts through the week that were not obligatory but were wanted. She told Nina about the soup. Nina sat quietly for a moment, which was unusual for Nina. Then she said, "Clara." "I know," Clara said. "Do you like him?" Nina said. "I do," Clara said. It was the simplest, most complete thing she had said about it. She had been turning it over for weeks, and it kept coming back to the same 3 words. "Does he know?" "I think so," Clara said. "We haven't said it yet." "Why not?" Clara thought about it. "Because I wanted to be sure it was real first, not just a feeling, something with roots." Nina looked at her. "Clara," she said, "you don't let anything get close until it has roots. The roots are already there. I can see them from here." Clara was quiet. She knew Nina was right. She had known for at least 2 weeks. She had simply been doing the thing she always did, turning it carefully, checking it from different angles, making sure it held. It held. Owen called her that evening, not a text. An actual call, which was slightly unusual, and made her sit up from where she had been lying on her bed. "Is everything okay?" she said. "Everything is fine," he said. "I just wanted to say something, and I wanted to say it, not type it." "Okay," she said. A brief pause. "I like spending time with you," he said. "I like it more than I've liked spending time with most people. I wanted you to know that I'm not just showing up out of habit or convenience. I show up because I want to be there." She was quiet for a moment. "I know," she said. "I know you know," he said. "I still wanted to say it." She looked at the yellow dress, hanging on the back of her door where she had put it that first night and not moved it. She had left it there, she realized, the way you keep a small reminder of where something began. "I'm glad you did," she said. "I'm glad you answered," he said. "I always answer," she said. "I know," he said. And she could hear in those 2 words, in the particular way he said them, that he knew it was true and that it meant something to him. They talked for another hour. About nothing particular. About the kids in the reading group, about one boy who had been struggling with a word for 3 sessions and that week had read it cleanly and looked up with the expression of someone who had just unlocked a door. About a park project Owen was working on, a small neighborhood park redesign, a corner that had been underused and was going to become something better. About the diner where they always went on Tuesday nights, which had started to feel, she said, like theirs in a small way. "That's how those things happen," he said, "one Tuesday at a time." "Yes," she said. After they hung up, she sat on her bed for a while. She thought about the night at the gala, the 1 hour and 47 minutes, the yellow dress, the table 7 feeling, the studied and assembled expression she had worn for the room. She thought about the moment the chair beside her had been pulled out, and the sound of it, and how she had looked up to see a man with a lanyard that read staff placing 2 glasses of water on the table without explanation. She thought about all the small things that had come after, the DJ analysis, the hand on the dance floor, the correct coffee already waiting, the soup, the Sunday in the park, the call tonight, the one he made because he wanted to say something and he wanted to say it, not type it. She thought, this is what it looks like when something is real. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive fully formed. It comes in small pieces that accumulate gradually, quietly, until one day you look at what has gathered and understand that it has weight. She got up. She crossed the room. She took the yellow dress from the back of the door and hung it properly in her closet, not because she was putting it away, but because she was keeping it. She wanted it in good condition. She thought she might wear it again. There would be, she felt quite certain, more evenings worth arriving for. There is a story people tell sometimes when they are trying to describe the way love begins, and it goes like this. First there was nothing, and then there was everything all at once like a light switching on. Clara had heard that story. She had told versions of it herself, about other moments in other years, and she did not think it was wrong exactly. Some things do arrive like that. Some moments divide time cleanly into before and after, and you know the exact second of the crossing. What she had with Owen was not that story. It was a different and perhaps more honest one. It was gradual and accumulative, and sometimes so quiet she could not see it moving. It was the soup, and the park Sunday, and the Tuesday dinners, and the photos of small dogs sent without captions. It was the phone call and the 2 glasses of water, and the hand held out not quite smoothly on a dance floor in a community center where the streamers were the color of good intentions. It was all of those things in sequence, each one its own small certainty, each one a stone placed carefully in a path. They walked that path without naming it for a while. Not out of fear, or not only out of fear, but because naming a thing sometimes changes it before it is ready to be changed, and both of them were people who understood the value of letting something be exactly what it was before you told it what to call itself. On a Friday evening in November, 2 months and 1 week after the gala, they were sitting on the floor of Owen's apartment with takeout containers between them and a film playing on the screen that neither of them was fully watching. The apartment was warm. The street outside was dark and cold and running with headlights. She had been there enough times now that she knew where he kept the plates and where the good blanket was, and that the lamp in the corner had a bulb that flickered slightly and he had not yet replaced because he found it. He said, companionable. She was leaning against the couch. He was sitting beside her. The film said something. She did not follow it. She was thinking about something he had said at dinner. Something about the park project, about how the new design had a bench near the east entrance that he had pushed for in 3 separate planning meetings, because he knew, from his own experience of the neighborhood, that it was the right place for a person to sit. She had thought, of course you knew. She looked at him now. He was watching the film with the sideways attention of someone who is present in a room but also, partially, somewhere inside themselves. She knew that look. She had her own version of it. She said, Owen. He looked at her. She did not plan what she said next. She had turned many things over carefully in her life, had approached most important things with the patience of someone who checks twice before committing. But there was something in the warmth of the apartment and the flickering lamp, and the 2 months of small accumulated certainties that made the words arrive without the usual process. She said, I think I should tell you something. He turned toward her, fully. The film kept going in the background. He did not look at it. I was really not okay, she said. The night of the gala. I had been sitting there for almost 2 hours and I was about to go home and tell Nina I'd had a fine time, and I was going to believe that I was fine, and I think I was going to keep doing that. Going to things and leaving early and being fine. He listened. And then you sat down, she said, and you put water in front of me, and you didn't make it a thing, you just did it, and you said something honest about the room we were both in, and I don't know what I expected from that night, but I didn't expect that. She stopped. He was looking at her with that steady attention she had come to understand was not just something he was performing. It was him. It was how he moved through the world, with that quality of genuinely looking at what was in front of him, of not scanning past it for something more interesting or more convenient. I want to keep showing up, she said, to things with you. I think you've made me less afraid of arriving somewhere and not knowing what happens next. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, you made that possible. You started it, she said. You took the hand, he said. They looked at each other. There was a silence that was not uncomfortable. I think, he said slowly, the way he said things when he was choosing the most honest available word, that I am in a lot of trouble. She raised an eyebrow. What kind of trouble? The kind where you show up every Tuesday and find yourself counting the days to the next one, he said. The kind where you send someone a photo of a dog and then immediately look forward to what they'll say about it. The kind where you replace a light bulb you've been meaning to replace for 6 weeks because someone is coming over and you don't want them to notice the room is slightly off. She looked at the lamp. The bulb was new. She felt something move through her chest, something warm and definitive. You replaced it, she said. Last Tuesday, he said. He did not say for you, he did not need to. She reached over and took his hand. She held it the way you hold something you are choosing. He held hers back the same way. They stayed like that in the warm apartment, with the film moving along without them in the background. The street outside carried its Friday night sounds up through the window, muffled and distant. The lamp was steady now. She thought about the night of the gala. She thought about the assembled expression she had worn for 1 hour and 47 minutes. She thought about the yellow dress and the hopeful almost beige streamers and the DJ who had never, until the very last song, played anything from this decade. She thought about the moment she had heard the sound of a chair being pulled out beside her, and looked up, and found a man with a staff lanyard and 2 glasses of water and something true to say about the room. She thought about all the small things that led, one stone at a time, to this warm apartment and this lamplight and this hand in hers. She thought about how close she had come to leaving early. She thought, I am so glad I stayed. The film ended without them. They did not notice for several minutes. When they did, Owen reached for the remote, and she leaned her head against his shoulder, and he did not say anything, and neither did she. Outside, the city moved through its Friday night, headlights and voices, and the particular busy hum of people going to and from things. Inside, 2 people who had spent a long time sitting at the edges of rooms they didn't quite belong to had found, in the accumulation of small true things, a place that felt like it had been built for both of them. She did not know what came next. She was not someone who needed to know. She knew what was here. That was enough. More than enough. She closed her eyes. The lamp was steady. The room was warm. She was not going anywhere.